What does the coronavirus have to do with crucifixion? Well, more than you might think. This is Easter week when Christians all over the world remember the death or the crucifixion of Jesus, and then a few days later, what they believe to be the resurrection. And at this time, it seems that is just more real than ever before. Well, why, you might ask? Crucifixion, what actually kills a person in crucifixion? Think about it. Have you ever wondered? Well, when someone's crucified, what do they actually die of? Is it the nails in the hands? Loss of blood? Beatings? Like, what is it that actually kills the person? It's actually asphyxiation. It's a loss of breath. When you're up on the cross, you're in such a position that the victim would actually have to pull themselves up in order to get the next breath. Every breath was difficult, and they had to fight for it. And sometimes it could take days to die on the cross. And here we are coming up to Good Friday, and we have a nation filled with people who are fighting for every breath, hoping to live, hoping to make it through. There was a story that came out of Italy a couple weeks ago. There was a man who was brought into the hospital, and he was having trouble breathing. They diagnosed him, and sure enough, he had the coronavirus. And they put him up to a ventilator so he could breathe and get the oxygen he needed. Well, another man then was brought in a couple of days later, but by that time they had run out of ventilators. And so this other man who'd been brought in, there was just not the equipment for him. And this one man who had the ventilator saw this, and he was moved with compassion. And he signaled for the nurse or the doctors and said he wanted his ventilator to go to this other man. What happened? Well, the man who gave up his ventilator died. And now, I don't know the man. I never got a chance to interview him. I don't know all what was going through his mind. Other than this, the report simply said he was a Christian. He was a Christian. Now, there could have been a lot of things that motivate him, but here's what I think. Here's certainly one of the things that, as a Christian, he could probably be motivated by. What is it that can cause a man to give up their ventilator when they're fighting for breath? What can motivate a person to do something like that? Here's a guess. That man knew a God who would come down and give up his breath for him, so therefore he could do so for others. That's kind of the message of Good Friday. That we all have this sickness, this virus, far worse than corona. The symptoms are relatively simple, obvious things, and yet they're very deadly. Selfishness, greed, lust, jealousies, power struggles, all these other things. All these things called sin. And yet God comes in the form of a man and dies by asphyxiation. That's why the gospel records that Jesus breathed his last. Why did he do that? Jesus breathed his last so that you and I could breathe our first, so that we could get a new breath inside of us, a new life inside of us. And that's what we celebrate on Easter with the resurrection, that new, as Jesus gave up his breath on Friday, that new breath, that new life is available for us, for you and for me. And it's there, and he offers it to us. We come to him, we tell him we are sick, and he becomes not just our ventilator, he becomes our new set of lungs and the air that we breathe. So wherever you are during this season, during this crazy lockdown that we're experiencing, I hope all of you have a very good Easter week, Good Friday, happy Easter. And I hope in the midst of this lockdown, of us certainly here in the UK having our leader stricken, just like the disciples saw their leader stricken, a lot of the message in the story of Easter, I hope it becomes more real to you. Happy Easter. Bye-bye.